Exactly. Well, look, I think we are going to get started. So let's get going. Thank you to everybody who has registered and attended. My name is Charlie Blake Thomas. I'm CEO of iQuant. We are very, very fortunate to have with us today Patrizia, who is a big fan of iQuant, I'm delighted to say, and we're a big fan of Patrizia. And we were talking some months ago about how we could add value to the community and what would be interesting. And as a thought leader in this area, Pat very kindly offered to do this webinar. So this webinar is really for the community. This is about us trying to help give value and create something meaningful for you. So yeah, thank you in advance, Pat. I'm going to hand over to you. I'm going to be clicking through the slides today, so it might not be as seamless as you expect it to be, but a couple of technical issues. But other than that, over to you. One thing I'd say just before we dive in, please do ask questions. Please put them in the chat. We'd love this to be interactive. We'll take them as we go. And so you should expect to get an answer to your question quite quickly, but please do get involved. This is supposed to be two-way. So yeah, over to you, Pat.
Thank you, Charlie. And let me iterate. I mean, I'm happy to share my experience, but I learned from your questions. So don't be shy. Share them because everyone will benefit from your questions. And as someone says, there are no stupid questions, only stupid answers. So let's get started. So thank you for having me today, and thank you for joining us today. So I'll try to give as much insight and inspiration in this hour and share my experience and my story and my passion, design operations. So I certainly have something that it's not a linear profile. So if you wonder who I am, I would say that there are three things that kind of define who I am. And I would say that I'm a very curious person. I have a non-linear but very fun career path. So I touched on accessibility, usability, academic research, user research before starting and being completely obsessed with operations, efficacy, and everything. So, and I love experimenting. So my whole life is an experimentation. So this is why, I don't know, Charlie, if you can go to the next slide or if there's something technical, but you will see kind of one of my motto that why should you join the Navy when you can be a pirate? And I really think that design operations is a pirate discipline of design, because it's all about learning the rules, to break them and to make an impact and to improve things. So let's get into the meaty things. So let's start talking about what is design operations. So I've been doing design operations for probably longer than my title would do. And I'm currently leading the practice at True Layer. And the key question that always comes up is, hey, why do we need design operations and what is design operations? I would love if this was in person to get hand risen and people saying, hey, I know what design operations is, and here are your answers. We are not in that context now. So, but if you want to write your answer in the chat, I would be happy to learn. But the reason why we need the design operations is because there are a lot of studies that shows that apparently knowledge workers spend up to 60% of their time doing work that it's not related to their job. Think about admin, think about managing emergencies, things that are not the focus. You've been hired for a role as a designer perhaps, or likely, but 60% of your time is not spent doing that. And another study from 2020 is really interesting because they have quantified how much an average UK worker is spending in doing their job. And in the UK is even less than 3 hours a day. This means that on average, our productivity is even less than that 60%. So this is the context. And if you work in design, you probably recognize these patterns if you think how you spend your time. So let's start also thinking what is design operations? So I start from the assumption, and correct me if I'm wrong, that we all kind of know what is design, because design operations is clearly a word that is combining design and operation. So design, there are a lot of definition of what is design. Let's assume for a moment that we all agree that design, as Steve Jobs said, is not how it looks like, it's how it works. And it's all about problem solving, finding solutions. So if we are all agreeing on what design means, and we all agree that it's all about design solutions, let's start thinking about what operations means. And my background is linguistics, so of course I go and try to find out what is design operations. And operations means transform. It means transforming resources, data, inputs into a better, improved, a desired good service or result. And why this transformation is happening in operations? It's a purpose-driven transformation that aims to create and deliver value to its customers. I pause here also because I see that the slides are a little bit behind. Is everything okay, Charlie? Okay, next. We're a little bit over. Exactly, so slide 7. And we go to slide 8. Exactly, so
I'm sorry, Pat, can you, sorry about this, everyone, slight technical issue. Have you got control of the mouse? I think I've just given it to you.
Oh, did you? Oh, okay.
Let's see if you can control and click through.
Okay. No,
not
on this. Oh, yes.
Yeah, okay.
You're
over
a
to you
genius.
then. Much better.
That's why well, I only can go back now. Back. Fantastic. So perfect. So we say design, it's problem solving, and operations is about transforming the existing context to create value to the customers. So who are the customers of design operations? So there are 3 types of customers. There's the design team, and it's the most obvious. We try to deliver value to the customers, to the design team, to improve how they work. The design leader, because design operations support design leaders in achieving the strategic goals. And of course, the business. So when we think about design operations, it's always a balancing act of creating value for all the stakeholders and transforming the way that design operates, is executed, and delivers value to the business to bring in new value. In a way, we can just say that actually design operation is an internal focused function within the business that applies system thinking in order to improve how the design team delivers value to the organization, how it operates inside out, and to solve the problems that actually limit the impact that the design function can have within the organization and on the user. So it's basically a tactical function that has a highly strategic impact and connects the business to design. So many times designers don't talk business language, and let alone business doesn't talk design language. So design operations becomes a thing because, hey, design practices have been going on for years. So you've been around probably longer than me, and well, we never had design operations. But when organizations mature, there's a point when the what becomes as important as the how. So if you think about what design operation does, is to enable the design leaders to execute on their product vision, on their product strategy, on their service strategy, by enabling all the parts that allow the teams to deliver value. So if you think about what a design leader does, they focus on the what, the big vision. the strategy, how design should work. Operations is just making sure that this can happen, making sure that this is something that can be delivered. So one of the biggest challenges for people in design operations is always positioning themselves. And for this reason, I kind of developed these nice little quadrants that should help people to kind of think and position. Are you a design leader or a design ops leader? And probably the biggest difference is that why a design leader is focused on the outside, looking at the market, looking at the user, looking at the product, looking at the service, looking at the what, and focusing on metrics that are related to the product, PRS, NPS, you name it, and crafts individual strategies that are on long term for the organization. The ops leader looks inside the organization. They look at the end-to-end design process, at the cross-functional collaboration. They look at how team works. They look at the tools ecosystem. They have a strategy on how executing the experience and how to ensure that the product delivers on the expectations. And also making sure that change is managed properly. If you remember, design is about transforming the reality. So change management is the strongest skill that a design ops person should have, while a design leader has to be amazing at negotiating and influencing roadmaps and stakeholders to achieve their product vision. There are other roles that I'm not focusing today that are often confused between a design program manager and a design manager, but they're kind of equivalent on the tactical level. I will stop here in case there are any questions or any doubts or anything before going forward.
Looks like there's a question Q&A. Right.
There is, but that's just, is there a playback for this, which yes, there will be. We will be sending that out after the event. If anyone has any questions at any time, please feel free just to pop them in the Q&A, and we can answer them as we go along, or alternatively you can wait to the end and we'll have a specific Q&A then too.
Another one looks like it's popped up, Gemma. I don't know if that's relevant to this.
It's just a thank you. So.
Great stuff. Let's keep going.
Perfect. So, okay. So what is, after all said so far, what is that design operation does on a daily basis? Now, I'm sharing my approach and my view. Think of design operations as a very fluid discipline that is still in the making. So I'm sharing my approach, which is one of the many approaches. It's not the best, it's not the worst, it's what works for me. So don't take it as this is design operations. This is my flavor of design operations. And for me, design operations is made of 3 buckets. One is all the business operations. Remember, one of the key customers of design operations is the business. So when I think about business operations, I think about managing the budget, managing the headcount, contractors, onboarding, offboarding suppliers and vendors, negotiating contracts, managing the procurement, the third-party management, managing the budget, the spending, calculating the ROI, all that part that can be seen as boring, but it's extremely empowering. You are able to create budget by looking at endemic inefficiencies in the budget and in the tooling and in everything. That it's just amazing, and it's a very key part because being able to manage the business operations, it's basically an enabler for the rest. Even if you have the best ideas on how to manage workflow operation and design operation or people, but you don't have budget, okay, that's extremely enabling. So bucket 1, it's all the stuff that has to do with managing the business and tooling and assessment. The second part is probably what everyone may think most about design operations, so workflow and design operations. So what is the end-to-end process for design? how does the tool ecosystem work? Are the tools integrated? Do the designer have everything they need to focus on design? Do we have the right design system? Is our design system designed to work and create efficiencies? What about our data governance? How do we handle research participants? How do we handle NDAs, consent forms, release forms? How do we share design standards? How do we manage research and design assets? How do we manage everything that goes into creating great problems, creating great products and solutions? So all that it's about understanding at the end of the day, the team, understanding the ways of working and making sure that design works seamlessly with all the cross-functional partners, and making sure that design just happens seamlessly by design in a way. And the third part is the people operation. So it's probably the fun part, if you want to think, because it's all about the culture. It's all about what is the design culture, what are the rituals and the ceremonies we have, how we empower and grow the team, how do we develop the skills, how do we measure so the skills and the composition of the team, so skill matrices, career path development, how do we hire, what are the skills we need, how do we communicate, how do we ensure everyone has focus time and does the best. So this is how I divide, and all the three are basically supporting the business, the team, and the leader to create value, to transform the organization, and making sure that we do what we're expected to do. So if we have to sum up in a way, what is design operations? DesignOps really has one clear goal for me, which is to generate quantifiable value to the business, the leaders and the design team by transforming and optimizing the end-to-end design process. It's all in how we transform the business, in how we transform the way we work and our daily life.
Just, we've got a couple of questions, if I could just ask those now. So one from Shalini, which says, can we say DesignOps is integrated into a designer's workflow, given that it is not a separate function in an organization?
Well, it is if you design it. So a designer shouldn't be dealing with negotiating contracts, dealing with onboarding vendors, shouldn't be dealing with budget, shouldn't be dealing with anything else. But design operations should embed the best practices and the tools and the workflow within the end-to-end design practice. So organizations that don't have a dedicated function tend to spread this function across different people. It could be the design manager, it could be some designers that are more passionate about that, but it's not what a designer should be doing unless they're passionate and they find themselves, like myself, doing design operations. But a designer should be doing design, and then if they like these aspects, well, they're welcome to join the DesignOps community.
Great, and you may be getting onto this, but from Jessica, we have, what is the best way to start building design operations function within a team? Which area of intervention is the best place to start?
Oh, that's a really good question, Jessica, because it really depends on a team. So I will be sharing a couple of case studies, and my advice is know your team. So what I always do at the beginning, it's a survey. It's a health check of what are the opportunities, the biggest pains and the biggest opportunities for your team. So, hey, how does your tool ecosystem look like? So I always map the tools, how the tools are integrated into the current workflow, end-to-end processes for designers, how the tools are integrated not only with processes and practices, but among themselves, how they're rolled out, how they are owned, and then look at the culture, look at how many hours are teams spending in meetings, what is limiting their ability to be productive, what is wasting the 60% of the time of your design, and what is making them unhappy or less happy as they could be. Because at the end of the day, it's all about happiness If a team is happy and they have a good work-life balance, they have the tool they need, they have the structure they need, and the best practices are embedded in the way we work, well, they will be more relaxed, they will have less pressure, so the quality of the work will increase, which will mean customers will be happier and the business will be happier and everyone will be happier. So where to start really depends on your team. Know your team, run a survey, understand what is the biggest pain, and just get started.
And one final question for now. How do you collect input on design team efficiency and workflow problems?
So we get into that with a couple of case studies. So you will see that how it happened, and I will tell you everything at that point. Because the next pillar, so if you don't have any more questions, is literally start talking about, okay, oops, one too much. The DesignOps pillar are exactly efficiency and efficacy. Because as we said, DesignOps wants to quantify, and efficiency is not something that is a subjective estimate of something. It's a quantifiable measure of how we design operations had an impact and an improvement on the status quo. And efficiency is not, oh, we want to make designers happier, or we want to make the design process easier, happier. They are subjective, qualitative metrics that have absolutely no value. We want to increase the team's happiness by 20%. We want to streamline the process and make it faster by 15%. It has to be objective, it has to be quantifiable, it has to be numeric, and it's not and never something subjective that we can kind of think of as something descriptive. And this is where it becomes exciting for me, at least, when we start thinking about efficacy and efficiency, because efficacy is all about doing the right things. The focus of efficacy is behaviors, getting the right behaviors, increasing the number of researchers and users that are involved in a study and in a project, increase the number of data points that we utilize and apply when we look at some designs to improve, increasing the number of experiments we run before deciding what is the right solution. It's all about creating the right behaviors, because the right behaviors, efficacy, generates efficiency and brings to life the business value, because efficiency is doing the things in the right way. It's all about the processes. It's all about understanding, hey, what is the return of investment of a tool? Hey, how long does it take to test a prototype? How long does it take to bring a customer in to view things? What is the delivery time? How much does it cost in terms of resources to deliver these projects? It's all about doing the things right. It involves a lot of effort in planning. It involves a lot of effort in resourcing, in assessing the effort and looking at things that actually help the organization to have those gains. But those gains are, first of all, gains for the designers, because clear processes, streamlined ways of working, save time for them to do more design, because they don't have to waste time doing other things. And believe it or not, inefficiencies are endemic and they propagate across the organization. So if you just think about, I mentioned a few, I hope you can recognize at least one: inconsistent ways of working, poor cross-functional collaboration, you know, when you argue with the marketing or the engineering and product teams, tools that are not inadequate and are not adequate for the purpose, or they don't function, or they're not right for you. You don't have the templates and you have to rebuild the templates every single time. There are no processes, and it's kind of wasting. But what this is causing is poor life-work balance, long hours. Long hours, of course, cause they lower the quality of the output, because hey, if you're working long hours, chances are your attention span will drop. So by the time that you go back to your design, the quality will be poorer. You will have to do a lot of rework. You will have a lot of delays. So all these are inefficiencies that have high cost, both for the teams and the business. And the reason is that it's not only the design team that is affected, because design is cross-functional by definition. I mean, to do design well, you need to work well with product, with engineering, with marketing, with all the teams. So if you start thinking about how an organization works, you start seeing that if something doesn't work in one part of the system, let's say in one team, it will affect people, other business units, it will affect processes, it will affect resources, just because at the end of the day, design operations needs not to focus only and in a silos on the design team. It needs to apply what is called system thinking. System thinking means you think in scenarios and you think at the big picture, and you see how a change in a process in design can impact and affect the marketing team, the engineering team, the product teams. A system is this complex composition of different parts that can be human, the people, and non-human, the processes. So thinking about design operations means being aware that whatever change you bring into the organization, into your design team, it can have and will have positive or negative effect. Your role is to understand that effect and to multiply the benefits of the transformation you bring, the change you bring beyond design. But that's a little bit the ambition that everyone has. Any questions so far, or should we go with case studies?
Yeah, we've got one from Joanne. It says, on average, how long does it take to realise that changes to processes are needed and to implement them for new design ops to a team?
Good question. So, it depends on which process are you thinking. So if you're thinking about, hey, I just want to collect all the briefs in a single repository and streamline all the briefs, because perhaps you have 10 briefs for kind of 3 functions, well, that may take probably a month. If you're thinking about a quarterly planning, which is something I'm facing now, you have to create a whole infrastructure. You have to create intake forms, a prioritization matrix. You have to create OpMax engagement models to prioritize and deprioritize. You need to have negotiation session. You need to build up templates and mechanisms to allocate resources, estimate effort, and look at all the planning for the quarter based on the resources you have, the business impact, the prioritization of the teams, and the impact of initiatives on other teams. And that can take quarters and quarters, even 1 year, to get to a consolidated version. So it can be anything, but just remember that change management and transformation is not about going to the team and say, hey, from today, we live in a new world, and change everything overnight. It's more about small experiments, talking to the people, making sure you understand the problem, you play back the problem so that someone will be willing to help you to make the change that everyone needs. You will have advocates, work with them, learn with them how to improve, extend the experiment, and before you know, everyone is following and doing the right thing. So I know it's a broad question, but there are so many cases and so many variables in here.
Great, thanks. That's it for now.
Mm-hmm. So let's share a couple of stories about, hey, what does it mean improving efficiency? So I will start saying something that hopefully it's not new or too new. So did you ever had designers coming to you and saying, oh, I'm overwhelmed, I can't keep up with the work, there's too much to do, I'm working long hours, I even need to do something on weekends because I can't keep up? Now, that's not the problem. That's a symptom. That's what they perceive as being a problem. Because the real problem, at least in our case, was that we had designer complaining about this, and we were just saying, well, how is it possible we have all the resources? And the real problem was not that they were working long hours. It was that if you think about a 2-week sprint, and every sprint you want to test where you are with 5-6 users, and every designer had to basically self-recruit their own users. And we estimated with a survey kind of, the wisdom of the crowd. You ask everyone, how long does it take to do something? And then you do the average. And the average per sprint to recruit, schedule, bring in paid incentive participants for user studies was anywhere between 2.5 days, which means that every month a designer or the design team had to work the equivalent of 1 extra week, 5 days per month, just to do all the recruiting to be able to test at speed all the prototypes and the work in progress, etc. So that's not ideal. You don't want your team to work a lot, especially because this has consequences. There's an impact in that. It's not only the long working hours, the fact that you have limited time to analyze and synthesize the results, that if you don't have, maybe you reduce the number of tests, you start looking for shortcuts, you perhaps start using the same users over and over, or you test just with 2, or you find ways to avoid, which actually has also some GDPR related risks that companies don't want to face. But this, if you look at it in a more systemic way, has a lot of business consequences, because if you do the math, it currently meant that we were wasting the equivalent of 350 working days where designers were doing non-design work. And it was the equivalent of 1.5 full-time employees, which meant the business was basically wasting the salaries of 1.5 designers because they were not doing design, right? This is why we hired them. And on the top of that, looking at how we were doing the recruiting, we had massively high recruitment costs. We had extremely slow lead times, so bringing in customers was taking ages. We reduced the number of tests because it was just painful. That meant we need to test more because the quality was lower, and we had all these other impacts. So we started with some hypotheses because, well, did I say that I like experiments? I really do, and I live by experiments. So we started saying, what if we, how can we reduce by 90% the non-designers' work when it comes to recruitment? So we want to reduce the lead time by 35%, reduce the spending. So what we did was designing an experiment where we hired a dedicated resource whose role was to hire participants. 9 months in London, we had this resource doing this job. At the time, I was working in a multinational company. I was managing 7 global teams. So this problem was felt across the globe. So we worked with all the cross-functional partners in this case, and we just started testing and saying, okay, are we able to have an impact? So we designed the whole end-to-end workflow. So in a GDPR way, compliant way, we looked at, hey, what does it mean recruiting participants? What are the options? How do we build and own a database? How do we contact? How do we work with our internal partners when we want to talk to customers? So how do we work with analytics, with marketing, our CRM team? How do we recruit and train the resources? How do we roll out the service? How do we measure impact? And actually, in 9 months, the results were outstanding. So within 2 years, we rolled out this role across all 7 global teams. And in the first year, we increased the design team capacity by 65%. So basically the equivalent of 2 full-time employees. And in the second year, the equivalent of 4.5 full-time employees. This just recruiting a dedicated resource that was doing the job. We increased the number of tests by 300%. We decreased the cost by 55%. Team health was, of course, better. The attrition went down. Everyone was happy. And the lead time, the time between the need to do a research and the time you actually had the customer in front of you, decreased by 65%, with some peaks even higher. So this is how you bring in processes to create efficiencies, and you see the business value here, but you also see the impact on designers. I stop here. If there's any questions, any comments.
We've got one question, but it might be something to bring in at the end, really. But what books or resources do you recommend on this subject?
Okay, so yes, let's talk about that at the end. So I will share a couple of things. But yes, it's a fascinating field, isn't it? I'm biased.
I think, Pat, just to comment on it, it's fascinating to see the quantifiable results, because as you're talking about it and describing setting it up, that in itself could be a huge barrier, because people would say, well, we've got to go to all this effort to set up design operations. But now you can actually see how that delivers back to the organization and the function. It's really interesting.
It is, because, well, I will have to admit, I'm not a good storyteller, especially when it comes to go to my manager and say, hey, I'm cool, I'm good. I'm not good at that. So I find that the best way for me to tell my manager how cool I was not to tell them that I was cool, but to show them. So yeah. Don't tell, show. And this is how I started becoming obsessed with quantifying the impact I can have on the organization. Because just telling everyone we improved the design process doesn't mean a thing. Improving, making better means different things to different people. Yeah. But if you start thinking about, hey, what are the 3 dimensions that I can impact? Which is the iron triangle? It's time. So can I reduce the time to delivery? Can I increase the time my team has back for focus time or for private life? Can I, so it's time, it's quality. How can I increase the quality, reduce the number of hours my team is spending in rework? How can I make sure they don't need to do 3, 4, 5 iterations of the same design asset because they don't have the right information to execute? And resources, how can I make sure that I have, the resources are people, they are happy, but the resources are also money. I have the money to enable things to happen that bring in value. And if you see all this, it's all about what are the gains in resources, the FTE, in cost, in lead time, in team health. So it's all about quantifying, and it's a game. So the secret is never start a project unless you have a baseline and a clear ability to even have directional data, but get directional data. Otherwise, I mean, and you will see with the next case study, which is something we worked with Charlie and iQuant. So this is something, I never know if I share the data with you at the end, Charlie, but we quantify the impact of your webinars and your trainings at that time. So
oh wow, well we didn't see that, so this is exciting. This is a first for us as well. And just on this point for a moment though, I think that for those people running OKRs as a objective setting framework, one of the things that we do OKRs at iQuant, and one of the things that's often hard is to find measures in something that isn't typically measured. And so by taking this approach, you've actually got some really clear key results that you can drive if you want to structure the implementation of DesignOps into your sort of your annual goals.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's exactly what I do, and I'm absolutely obsessed with OKRs. It's so much fun. It's kind of a game.
We do have a couple of questions quickly. How do you go about tracking the baseline data of how many hours each designer spends on recruitment?
So this is part of surveys that I tend to run. If I see that's a problem, or if I identify a problem, I start asking everyone to give the best guesstimate. We know no one likes time tracking and timesheets, but this Wisdom of the Crowd, which is a book by, I can't remember the author, it says if the more people you ask for an estimate, the closer you get to the reality. So by start asking people, as simple as that, hey, from 1 to 100, what is the percentage time you spend in rework and why? Hey, from how much time are you spending recruiting participants to test for your sprint? How many hours? Give me a quantification. And you create these directional metrics that will help you to assess the impact and what you do. We are not launching a rocket in this space, right? We don't have to have super precise measure. What is important is tracking the trend and showing that there was an improvement. Then you may get amazing results, but the idea is to focus on the trend rather than focusing on the exact number per time and making up your own metrics.
And that links to another question. How often do you do this kind of analysis within your team?
I do a massive long health assessment once a year, where I also create how do you call it, the roadmap. And at that point, when I create the roadmap, I share it with the team. And then after 6 months, I do a health check to see, okay, am I on track? Am I achieving the results I want? Am I in the right direction or not? So, and I may run an initiative where I have a very short and focused little survey with interviews. I mean, my background is research, right? So that's what I do, where I try to see and quantify a specific project, a specific baseline measurement that will help me with a project going forward. But always be mindful and respectful of your team's time. Two large surveys a year and max 1 short per quarter, because otherwise you will undermine engagement. People won't answer your survey and just say, hey, I'm here to do my job. You're wasting my time. And also, once you run surveys, make sure you share the findings with the team so that they feel engaged with your decision, with what you're trying to do, and make sure you understand their problems and they are aligned with what you see and the priorities you see, because that way they will follow you and they will engage with you and you will be successful. If you just run a survey, disappear for 6 months and launch a project, expect a lot of pain. If you run a survey, play back the results, ask if those are the right priorities to focus on, get your allies, get your guinea pig and your supporters, and start running experiments. Okay, so let's go to the second one. So which is about, okay, I don't know why I can't move, but it's all about efficacy. So we talked about efficiency before, now we talk about behavior. So has it ever occurred to you that designers complain that when they go in a room with the product teams, no one listens to them? They feel misunderstood, undervalued. They come to the meeting with all the beautiful shaped persona and everything, all the user journey mapping they did, with all the fantastic qualitative design thinking aspects. And then they came out livid and upset, and they say, okay, no one is listening to us. They decided to change this part of the experience, despite we know that Tom, our persona, really loves that part and they don't listen to us. Now, if it ever happened to you, I mean, I will tell you that one of the reasons is that actually we designers are great when it comes to design thinking, but designers and PMs generally speaks different languages. Designers rarely talk data. They don't use data, they use empathy. We've been so much focused on design thinking and empathy and go broad, go narrow, etc., that in a way the design community is often, not always, but often behind when it comes to utilizing analytics and data to make decisions. So what happens in those meetings is where the designer has great qualitative data, the product team will have some product behavioral data from analytics telling them that although Tom really likes the part of the journey, it's the part with the highest friction. So it's not a conflict, it's just not speaking the same language and not being able to focus on the same priorities and to see the experience that everyone is working on from the same point of view. So there's a big challenge here. And the challenge that I had was, how can I transform T-shaped designers, so designers that are phenomenal when it comes to empathy, that are focused on design, craft, and excellence. They execute briefs and they do design that it's absolutely fantastic. They deliver for product teams, and they are generally assessed on the quality of the deliverables they do, on the quality of the experience they do, into pie-shaped designers. A pie-shaped designer, it's everything that a T-shaped designer is, plus it's capable of talking data language and using behavioral data. It makes data-driven, data-informed decisions. It's a partner and discusses decisions and options rather than executing on the briefs. It delivers with and in partnership with product because they speak the same language, they see the same word, they are aligned. And their impact is not assessed on the deliverable, but on the impact of the solution they deliver. So that was the challenge, and that was a fun challenge to have, because then we started saying, okay, hypothesis. Everything is always driven by hypothesis. So what if we expose all designers to data platforms, data tools that can help them to better understand their design, the user's behavior, what is happening, how they can improve the quality of their design and reducing the effort. So how can we then develop a data-informed design practice, enable designers to understand and utilize data as an asset and as a part of their end-to-end experience and workflow. And also this would have an impact on the cross-functional collaboration, because at that point, marketing and product that use data heavily will have a partner in design that utilizes data as well. So what we did was this XD Academy. It was a 6 months program, 4.5 hours of training a week with the partners, with all the people that actually work with us, like iQuant. iQuant was one of the key platforms that we had. So we brought everyone, we taught everyone how to make advantage of and how to speak data. So teach the designer to speak data. So we run this academy. So and how do we started creating the metrics? So again, to answer the question before, we ran a survey to understand what was the awareness and the confidence in analytics and in the tools that we had in the organization. We created a syllabus. We had a lot of discussion to make sure we had commitment from the leadership team, where everyone was expected to commit 90 minutes a week. Attendance was, of course, taken unnoticed. And we ran a follow-up survey with the exact same question to see how the needle was moving and how confidence was changing. And we also looked at the analytics of the tool. So how many people were utilizing the tool, how many people had an account on the analytics tool and the data tool we had, how frequently they were accessing it, what they were accessing it for, how many projects, how many queries. So we were looking at utilization, so behaviors, but also self-assessment on confidence, self-assessment on how they felt. 6 months after, Charlie, what happened? I mean, you did 2 sessions. We had an increase of 100% engagement with the tools. So people started using it. An increase of 84% in designer that started using analytics. An increase of 70% in projects. compared to before. And when it comes to how people felt, we had two groups. I mean, we had someone that was really, really engaging, who saw an increase of 27% in confidence in using analytics and using data platforms, and other analytics and data. So just generally talking about data, and nearly 30% increase in using tools, and the number of queries just went up to 1,800 queries in 6 months. So there's been a massive impact on all this. So just some final remarks, so that we'll have probably 5 minutes for questions. I will go through this very quickly. Remember, every design team has inefficiencies. Acknowledge it, be honest, and you know what? You will solve something and something else will happen. So your job you will never run out of job when it comes to operations. Understand your team and their pain. Every team is different, and every team is a living organism, which means the pain they feel today, it's a pain it's a different pain from the pain they have tomorrow. You can't adopt the same strategy for every organization and every team, because every team is unique. Embrace it and just get to know your team, engage with them, measure it, measure in efficiency, create the baseline. If you are not able to have clear metrics and a clear trend that you want to impact, it means that the problem hasn't been formalized well enough. So keep thinking until you don't know what is the impact you want to have with your project. And yes, you will solve on one side, but because everything is a system and organization is a system, design is a cross-functional team, you will also impact other business units, other teams. So use this at your advantage and try to create initiatives and projects that have a positive impact on as many people as possible. So multiply the positive effect, but be mindful the domino effect works also on the negative side. If you create a mess with the design team, chances are this mess will go through and navigate and propagate across the organization. And then, as I was saying, teams are living organisms. They change, they mood change, the context change, so many things. So just keep listening to the team and be open and embrace whatever challenges they have as your own challenge, because making them happy will make the business happy, the manager and the leadership happy. And goals and efficiency change constantly. So apply system thinking, be open, analyze. Don't think that just because you run a survey today, you are done for the next 2 years. Just keep talking and listening. And that was basically it.
Great. Thank you very much. Just going to stop sharing now. Oh, hang on.
We had one question that was submitted in advance. If you can't change the organization, i.e. quit. This said, they said, I hear this a lot. What do you think of that phrase? If you can't change the organization, then change the organization.
You need to be mindful when you really can't change the organization, or where there's an objective limit. And I've been in organizations, and I left those organizations where there was so much avoidance for an openness to change that you just need to acknowledge. Either you decide to have small incremental changes, or you just acknowledge that this is not an organization that is mature enough to work with operations, because they have still some cultural problems that are bigger than operations that need to be solved. So there are organizations that you can change and you need to develop your strategy. But in some organizations, they're just not open to it. They just stick to their model, and well, they need more time for that. So
one thing I want to add, going back to I think it's one of your last slides there on adoption of tools. Obviously, we're I guess a tool in a sense. You know, we're a part of that ecosystem. One of the challenges we find across our clients, and I think just sharing this with everyone on the call, is actually adopting those. A lot of people think about what they want to get, what they want to bring in, but they don't think about how they're going to adopt them and how they're going to embed them in their process. And I think that's why, honestly, being very transparent, we actively look for potential clients who have design ops functions, because there's a much more deliberate approach to using those tools. And so it's just a watch out for anyone who's thinking about their tool sets. Really think about what you do after you've bought it. The buying part is only the first bit. But yeah, no, that's fascinating.
If I can add to that, I mean, the thing that always surprises me when I join a company and I ask, okay, who are our account manager, success manager? And a lot of time, no one knows. And I say, how are we working? I mean, our interest as a company is to make and get the biggest value from the tools we have. So if we don't engage with them, I think I was your worst user, because I kept asking you, I want training, I want this, I want the train done in this way. And the reason was, if I'm not able to get value, I'm not able to renew. And then the question is the tool not worthy, or is the company not ready for the tool? So for me, working and partnering with the vendors, all vendors, is critical part, because, well, if I'm able to have the right relationship and get more trainings, more engagement, I will be able to bring more value to the company and to the team. So it's a win-win.
Agreed. Well, look, I think just before everyone goes, don't hang up yet. Please stay for 30 more seconds. We would like to, in the chat, you'll see a link pop up. We would like to offer anyone that's attended a free consultation with us, and book in a slot that suits you, bring some content that you want to analyze, bring some questions around how we're working with other clients and working with thought leaders like Patrizia to help implement design operations. So yeah, come take advantage of that. Pop something in the diary and come and talk to us. That would be great to see you. But other than that, few housekeeping matters. This will be sent out as a recording. There will be an email coming around with a link in it. The link for booking a meeting is in the chat now, but also will be in the email. And yeah, if you need anything or want to get in touch with us, please do. But other than that, I think, Gemma, have I missed anything? And Pat, please close it out.
Yeah, I mean, I would finish that. Actually, if there are designers and researchers that are looking for a perm role in fintech, get in touch.
There you go. So if you're looking for a job, get in touch with Pat. Didn't know that was coming out of this one.
I will make your life easy.
There you go. There you go. We've just demonstrated that. So that's fantastic. Gemma, anything more from you?
No, there was one question that we didn't answer. Okay. If you have a quick minute to do that, it was just on if you had any particular advice on measuring DesignOps maturity. I think that's from Andres, if I've got that right.
Okay. Well, DesignOps maturity, it's kind of very correlated to design maturity in an organization. So if you look at the Envision maturity model or the Nielsen maturity model for design, it kind of also tells you how the design organization is mature and is ready. So there are some points where an organization is ready and mature for design operations, and it's when the business is scaling, is going global, there's a division in roles, and that's a completely different talk. But there are some moments and some key indicators that if you want to think when is the moment to introduce design maturity. The thing to look at is when design operations is positioned at a strategic level. So think about DesignOps and the design VP of design mirroring the CEO and the COO relationship. If there are peers and they can work on strategic initiatives and they are part of the leadership, that's okay. If you see DPMs, design program management, this is when it's only about design operations, it's only executing tactical stuff, and the impact is very low. So there are different ways of looking at this. I'm happy to have a chat about that at any time. I mean, I don't think we have the time now, but that's a really good question.
There's going to be a blog coming out in due course following up with this. So if you follow us, iQuant and Pat on LinkedIn, you will be able to get access to that blog when it comes out. Keep sending in your questions. And we may well, if we can get some more Pat's time in the future, do another one of these, but on perhaps the next topic. But thank you to everyone for your time. We really appreciate you giving up an hour of your busy day. And we look forward to hearing from you. Don't forget to click the link in the chat if you want to get a free consultation with us. Thanks again, Pat. It's been a pleasure.
Pleasure all mine. Have a lovely rest of the day.
Much.
Bye-bye. Bye.
Bye-bye.